Hello, everyone. My name is Wes Asmal. Welcome to another episode of Two Ways to Skin a Cat, our first one for 2024. This is a show where we talk career experiences, entrepreneurship, and investments. The main aim is to show that there's more than one way to be successful other than just climbing the corporate ladder. We are live on LinkedIn and YouTube, and the show will be available on podcast by tomorrow. So, for those of you who've watched quite a few of these episodes, if you know anyone else who would benefit from watching, please share it with at least one person. If you're joining us live, drop a one in the comments so that we know we're not talking to ourselves, and drop a two in the comments if you're watching the recording. My guest for this week is Sine Shabangu, a chartered accountant working for a big four firm in the United Kingdom in the capital markets division, and she's been there for the last 3 years. Sine, thanks so much for joining me today.
Oh, US, thank you so much for making the time and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well. Let's jump straight into the meat of it. Tell us your story. Where do you come from? And even outside of work, who is Sine Shabangu? Give us that backstory.
Okay, I'll get started from the very beginning. So I was born in rural KZN, in a town called Imotu. And then my family moved when I was 6 or 7. We moved over to a bigger town, a coal mining town, Newcastle, which is also in KZN. I grew up here, primary, high school, all done in Newcastle. And then my mom, she passed on when I was in matric, but earlier on in high school, she just told me about this career. She wanted me to be a CA. She had heard of someone or met someone that was a CA and just felt like this would be the best way for me to actually progress as I was growing. So I decided to pursue the career. I then went to the University of Johannesburg, did my undergrad there, did my postgraduate there. And then after that, I moved over to EY. So I did my articles with EY for 3 years at the Joburg office. Once I was done with articles, I knew I wanted to see the rest of the world. That was something that I knew halfway through articles. So I started speaking to friends that were already doing secondments abroad. And then I moved over with cross country consulting, which was based in the US. I was in Chicago for 4 months of 2020. Then COVID hit. Then we had to hurry back home, and my aspirations of living abroad were completely demolished. But when I got back home, I focused on my philanthropy, which is why I work on the Great African Read, outside of what I do as a CA. And then I started applying for other jobs again outside of the country, but I knew I wanted to not be in the US, I wanted to be in the UK because I saw my friends traveling a lot more in the UK. So I said, oh, that's the perfect move. I decided to, then eventually I got a call from Capital Markets. They wanted to interview me, went through 2 rounds of interviews, and then I moved over in 2021, and I've been with the firm ever since. So I've progressed from senior, I joined as a senior, moved over to assistant manager, and then my latest promotion to manager, obviously, in the previous year.
And outside of work, other than traveling, clearly.
Top of the list. Outside of work, I lead an organization called Hamsini Nane, and our biggest initiative is by far the Great African Read because it actually has global recognition as well. So I basically started this organization. There was a competition that Nedbank, one of the biggest banks in South Africa, ran in 2014. And they basically wanted CAs or students that were studying towards a career in chartered accountancy to come up with initiatives, community initiatives, drives that would basically uplift their communities. I came up with a spelling bee. I sold it to Nedbank. I was announced third in the country. They said, great job. We will support this initiative. So I launched it in 2014, and it just never left me, really, US. I really feel like seeing the impact of real tangible change because of ideas that you have that can go on to change an entire community. Something was really birthed inside of me, and I wanted to do more. So that then unraveled into the Great African Read, which I currently run now, where we have published books, we have renovated reading rooms across South Africa in the Eastern Cape and Gauteng. We've done 2 now in KwaZulu-Natal. And I'm constantly working on this. And I'm just so glad that it has grown in the way that it has. In 2021, we were recognized in Denmark for a competition that they run over there. We're one of the top 6 initiatives across the globe that were actually recognized. We're representing South Africa. So to just have seen it grow in leaps and bounds, and it continues to do exactly that, has just been it inspired me, if anything.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I
Yeah,
want to go into your career a little bit. 3 years is a long time to be in the same international organization. Most people
yeah,
I know go for like that 3 month stint or secondment, or maybe up to 2 years. I mean,
yeah.
but you started as a senior, you've been promoted twice. Well done, by the way, and to
Thank
manager.
you.
What's your secret?
Is there a secret? um, so I did a secondment before. So I did the 3, 4 month stint before. So I know exactly what you're speaking to. But I think what I've really enjoyed about capital markets and why I feel like I've stayed for as long as I have is that it's so tailor-made that you don't feel like you're working on just one project. So sometimes you're embedded on an audit. So you do exactly what people would do if they were on a 3 or 4 month secondment. But most times you'll be working on complex control implementation. You'll be working on a wide range of transactions like cross-border IPOs, local IPOs. It's specialized transactions. So it's not just one thing, it's varied, which I absolutely enjoy because it doesn't feel like the same thing time and time again. And you're working with people from all over the world. We have a big team, some from the US, some from South Africa, a big South African team actually. Brazil, literally the world feels represented in our division, which is always so great because you learn something different. So the project is never the same. The people that you work with is likely never the same. So it's a great way to actually feel like you're growing as a person and you're challenging yourself.
No, that's amazing. And if someone was
Mm-hmm.
interested in getting that overseas experience like you have, what would you recommend that where should they start and what should they be
Yeah.
doing?
I always say, I think during articles, before you even get to your third year, by second year, you should be having those conversations with people that are already like you have friends, you know, people that you did articles with that have already completed their articles. Speak to those people that are all over the world. Figure out which region you want to work in, figure out where internationally you want to work. It's not just audit. And I think that's also one of the limiting parts of the whole process where people only feel like they can go across if they go into the audit space. And it's so varied that I know people in treasury, there are so many other people in different spaces outside of audit. But the best way, firstly, is obviously you have to talk within your firm, figure out which opportunities they have to get you on secondments within the firm. So you're just in a different region, but working for the same firm. You can speak to other organizations like SAPRO, Cross Country Consulting, Makosi, that do those type of that allow you to still do secondments with different type of firms. Maybe the opportunity just works better for you because it's the region that you actually want, or you can actually just apply with the firm directly. The firm always has opportunities. You can get people that you did articles with that have gone before you to actually put down a referral for you, which is always easiest, right? So there are always ways to get in. You just need to figure out. I think it's so important that you have a clear vision of what it is you actually want to achieve. And then once you know what that looks like, start leveraging from the network that you've made during articles to really get you to where you need to get to. I think that's a really, really good starting point. Leverage from the network that you've already made.
It's great news, leveraging from the network. I like that. Nobody's put it
Mm.
out in that way before. For the audience, we'll be responding to questions towards the end, so please add your questions to the comment section now so that we don't miss them. Let's change over a little bit to capital markets. For
Yeah.
those who don't know what it is, can you give us a brief explanation? Because to me, it's also a little bit vague.
Yeah. I didn't know about capital markets until I actually they reached out to me. So when I had already okay, initially in the UK, what I had done was I got a friend to put down a referral for me, and I was putting down a referral to move over. Into the audit space because I actually didn't know that there were other spaces to enter into outside of just audit. Because I had that 3, 4 month stint in the US, I had PCAOB experience, which is US audit experience. So I'd worked on that type of work. So they saw that on my CV, they reached out and they just wanted to have coffee, like literally just a catch up. Hey, tell us more about what you did in the US. We want to hear about the experience that you've actually gathered or garnered over the years. And we want, well, over the few months during your secondment to figure out where we can actually place you within our organization. And luckily, it was a firm that I'd already worked with for 3 years. So it was easier and easier transition for me. We had that catch up session. Once we were done with that catch up session, we basically then they said, you know what, we think you might be the best candidate for the job that we're looking for, which was basically people with US experience, right? Good for me. Thank goodness it worked out. And then I went through a series of 2 interviews. So one with one of the senior managers within the organization, and then my follow-up interview was with the partner. And then I got into the space. But capital markets in itself, it's a specialized division within FARS, which is the Financial Accounting Advisory Department in the UK. So we basically support companies that are looking to IPO. That's one of our key niches in capital markets. So we help companies that are looking to IPO, whether it be locally or whether they're looking to IPO in the US. So that's the main niche that we do. But we've also, and that's the work I've been specializing in, which is control implementation. So we help companies that are now listing but need support in terms of understanding controls and control implementation. So we basically hold their hands and help them through that with our specialized knowledge of that particular space. So there are people that cross over, still do audit. I've worked on audits, not for a very long time, but you get to work on different projects. And what I've really enjoyed about my time in capital markets is you get to direct your career. So once you start working, once you hit the ground running and you figure out what the organization actually does or what the division actually does, you get to really direct your career in terms of the work that you want to do. So I started having conversations with my allocated buddy when I arrived. I started having conversations with my counselor at the time, he's been my counselor for the past 3 years, but I started having conversations with him and just being direct and saying, this is the type of work I want to do more of. How do we have the conversations with the people that specialize in this type of work? And that's how I've really garnered the experience in the control implementation space.
So it sounds like you didn't have any capital markets experience in your training contract at all.
Well, I didn't. I got the experience post articles when I did my secondment in the US. So once I was able to leverage from that, then I was able to pull that knowledge into my capital markets experience. So it's really moving from one space to another and figuring out what have I learned from this one experience that I can then nitpick and use in the next space. Like literally, it's always just about leveraging. It really, really is. It's what do I know, who do I know, and how can I use the opportunities that I've been provided or I've taken part in to move on to the next step of my career.
I haven't met that many people in capital markets. So for me, that implies that maybe it's a difficult industry to get into. But when you speak about it, it sounds like it's not that difficult to get into. What are the competencies that somebody needs to have if they want to join the industry? What do you think?
Well, in our space, you need to be a chartered accountant. So everybody that's in our division are all qualified CAs across the globe, really qualified in India, qualified in South Africa, qualified in the US. But you just need to have US experience because even when we are brought in embedded onto an audit team, we are known as the people with specialized knowledge. So we know how things work in the US, particularly. So that's what we offer. That's our offering. So if you've done a secondment in the US and that's something that you've worked on PCAOB clients and you've worked on SOX and that's something that you can use then if you want to get into that space. But that's very, very important that you can sell yourself in that way.
So that 3 or 4 month secondment is actually quite an investment.
It's a huge investment.
It's not a holiday.
It's not a holiday. But also when you are there, make sure that you are technically applying yourself and you're understanding how things work and how does the US fare to SA and what's different and what do they do better? Like just constantly be in a space where you want to learn, want to better yourself so you can use it going forward in other opportunities like you would with anything else.
I have a few more questions, but I see lots of questions coming through from the audience, so I want to jump over here. Got lots of questions from Zwingi, who's from AWCA. You've already answered that question, so I'm going to go to her next question, which is, what was the hardest thing for you about immigrating and acclimatizing to a new environment?
Where do I start? I'm very family orientated, so being away from my family, that was tough. So when I'm actually afforded with the opportunity to come back home, that's always like something that I actually enjoy. So that was very, very tough, being away from my family. I told my friend recently, I said, I watched so many South African shows. There was a point where I even got Showmax last year or 2 years ago because I was like, I need to just consume South African content. So I consume South African content more than I have at any other period of my life. Yeah, but I think just being away from your family and friends, that's probably the toughest thing by far. Missing, feeling like you're missing out on like baby showers and weddings and this and that. You constantly because you're always away.
And we've got another question from who says, "Tell us what is your sorry, not that one. What was the no? We asked that question. She's got so many questions there that I can't even keep track anymore." Please tell us some of your proudest moments in your journey and work with the Great Read.
With the Great African Read, it definitely has to be being recognized in Denmark for the work that we were doing, being considered as one of the biggest initiatives when it comes to literacy and advancing the literacy agenda globally, which has been absolutely amazing. If anything, we just did another reading room renovation, and I told my team, because I had missed out on two before, the one that we did last year, because I was away all the time. So I was like, no, this time around, we have to do it in December when I'm actually home, because I actually want to be at the school. I want to meet the teachers. I want to feel like I'm part of the start to finish end product of the whole thing. And I think just being able to gift a school, an impoverished school, a school that I feel like some of the schools that we work with are considered to be some of the forgotten schools of the world, really, truly. So being able to feel like you are making a difference, a tangible difference, not only for the school, but the community at large, because they use that space for the community. It really, really inspires you in a way that most things don't. So that's always something that I'm always very, very proud of, having those tangible rooms that people actually use to better their communities or the schools that they go to. Yeah.
Next question. What are the important questions that second year trainees should start asking themselves when exploring roles outside of audit and secondly outside of South Africa?
You need to figure out what it is you actually want to do. I think more than anything, our path as CAs is mapped out from start to finish until you finish your articles. And then you have to start and then it feels like you're scrambling. Then you don't know what the next thing is. But already from second year, you need to be, am I on the right project? What am I doing on these projects? What leadership qualities or what qualities am I getting out of this? What is the benefit? What networks am I leveraging from? What is my plan post articles, really? That's one of the biggest things, because I think what ends up happening is people reach the end of articles and they have no idea what they're doing. And it almost feels like you're just letting life happen to you. So you actually want to start taking control of your own life and start making real tangible investments and having the conversations with people in terms of, hey, I think the best starting point is figure out who you want to be. Go on LinkedIn. If you want to be US, reach out to US and ask it, how did you do it, right? Instead of just waiting for things to unravel, figure out what it is you want to achieve and start having those conversations, start making those decisions, start making those calls, and be very intentional about the career that you want for yourself.
I think that's great advice. I also want the audience to know is yes, you need to plan, but it's okay if you don't have everything figured out. People
Yeah,
don't expect you to be the finished
yeah,
article at the end of the
of
article. So
course.
don't have that anxiety of like, oh, I've done all the work and I don't know what to do. It's okay. As long as
Yeah,
you've got some sort of idea. And the only way you're gonna figure out what you like is if you try. So keep that in mind.
yeah, yeah,
Now she's asked the question
definitely.
that I was gonna avoid because I didn't want to put you under pressure, but how long do you intend to stay overseas? Can you answer the question? It's okay if you can't.
For as long as it benefits me and the organizations that I work with. I think I think feeling like I add value in spaces is very important to me. And I think that's why I've stayed in the capital markets for as long as I have, because at the end of each assignment, I always feel like I walk away feeling like the organization that we're working with benefited from the value that I added. So until I don't feel like that anymore, then I'm probably going to start making different moves. But I enjoy working abroad, but I obviously have a very special connection to South Africa. It's my home country. Yeah, but for now, I'm happy with where I am now and how I'm directing my career.
I thought you were going to say as long as the exchange rate remains the same, you're going to be.
That too.
And we've got another question, which is how are you able to expand your networks?
Mhm.
But not social climbing, but more rather the interactions you had with people during articles so as to expose yourself to opportunities.
Are we speaking about relationships within articles or now that I'm
So
working abroad?
I'm assuming during articles, and if I can add, just having conversations with people. It doesn't have to be like, oh, I need to speak to X, Y, and Z. You know what I mean? Just have networks with your friends, the people that in articles at the same level as you. Make sure
Yeah,
I mean, you chat to people, and that's
yeah.
how you create bonds.
No, definitely. And it's not always upward, it's even just across, right? So it's people that you were in jobs with that are like a worthy network for you even now, people that have gone into different organizations so you can share notes and talk about your experiences. There is a big South African community that's abroad. My buddy, when I moved across to London, was actually a South African lady who had worked at Deloitte. So you are constantly building a network. You're at every point. It doesn't have to be upward, which is also important.
Just have a chat. I think we might have had some.
But it can be, yes, are you still there?
I'm here. I'm here. We lost you at the end,
Okay.
but I think we got the gist. I do want to
Okay.
slip this one in a question from Nosisha in, which is, what was your biggest learning curve in capital markets? I think that's a good question.
No one tells you how vocal you need to be about the things that you want for your career. And I think when you're playing at a global level, you don't realize it as much until you walk into that space. And then you realize that you actually have to speak up. So, speaking up and saying, these are the jobs that I want to be on, these are the people that I actually want to learn from, these are the people that I want to work on, that's very, very important. So, you don't want to sit back and just let resourcing plan you on jobs or just wait for someone to pick you on their job. If you want to be on a project that you've heard people talk about, reach out to those people, hear what they're working on, talk to people, always have your ear on the ground, know what's happening, and just reach out to people and really be vocal and bold about the moves that you want to make.
It's almost like building your confidence. And I
It
know
really,
sometimes
really
us
is.
as the CA, sometimes we
I
like, if
know.
we're not sure, we're not going to say, if even if you're 95% sure, like I'm not
Yeah,
100% sure,
yeah.
but you have to be, otherwise you're not
Yeah.
going to grow. So
And I think
yeah,
another thing I want to add you is be teachable and be open to learn. Because one of the reasons why you don't want to vocalize and raise your hand for opportunities is because you feel like you don't know enough. And it's okay if you're going to admit that you don't know enough, but you're ready to learn, which is always going to get you on the better end.
and to me, last question. That's the last question I'm leaving to be asked. But what are your thoughts on further education after qualifying as a CASA? That's to me's last question. So
That's
I'll
something
leave that
I'm
one for you.
currently that's something I'm currently considering now. I think you get comfortable once you're a CASA because it opens so many doors. But once you start sitting down with yourself and you start asking yourself about the long termness of your career, you start going, maybe it would be beneficial. So I'm still trying to figure that out, doing. But I think it's very, very beneficial. If you want to be a big exec or a top exec, you'll always see that those type of people have those additional degrees outside of the CASA. It just depends on how you want to drive your career.
And don't feel forced to be to study something that you're not passionate about. If you're
Exactly.
interested in something, go for it by all means. If you're like, I
Yeah.
don't know what I want to do, and you're not sure, don't go and do an MBA that's going to take you 2 years if you don't know if it's going to benefit you. So rather
Yeah.
study something
Especially
that's
after going through CASA, which is already
exactly.
so hard.
Exactly. You get PTSD, you
Yeah.
need a break for a couple of years, and then you can think out what you want to study.
Yeah.
But I think let's round it up for questions. Otherwise, I'm going to be taking your whole evening away. Any last few words from you, or anything we didn't discuss that you'd like the audience to know?
I really just feel like post articles or people that I know are always so scared and they don't feel like there are opportunities outside of just audit, and they are. You just need to be very intentional about having the conversations, reaching out to people within your network that have already made those leaps and trying to or applying directly with the firms. But it isn't just audit that's available. There's so much more. Audit is important. I feel like it gets you in the door. But once you're in the organization, you can really figure out what your niche is and what you want to specialize in, and you can really grow in a direction that you hadn't anticipated initially.
I think that's a great way to end. The show has been live on YouTube and should be available on podcast by tomorrow. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on the podcast and you feel that it's added value, Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on that notification bell to get automatically notified when the next episode comes out. Sine, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Lewis.
Thanks everyone for joining us for another episode of Two Ways to Skin a Cat. Goodbye.